Now we are moving on to the second and the last session of the day, which is the very relevant session, and it is called "Are You Future Ready?" And to moderate the session, may I now call upon Mr. Srinivas Kunte, CFA, who is the director of the Professional Learning Committee in the CFA Institute. Srinivas is also a thought leader, and he has previously worked with Citigroup in Tokyo, Japan. Srinivas, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I hope I'm audible. After that excellent session from Nomium, and thank you, Jaina, for my introduction. The last session was on branding, and this session is on the future. So specifically, this session is on, are you really future ready? And for doing this session, we've got Rebecca Fender, who is going to present, who's got a very comprehensive set of slides on Are You Future Ready? A quick brief about Rebecca. She leads CFA Institute's Future of Finance initiative. Rebecca's group publishes studies to help investment professionals like you to build their careers. Recently, the group won Investment Professional of the Future. Their paper, Investment Professional of the Future, won the Best Investment Industry Paper Award by a group called Savvy Investor. Rebecca has testified before the US Financial Services Committee on AI Task Force and the impact of artificial intelligence on investment roles. She speaks regularly at industry events and is quoted often in Financial Times, Bloomberg, and New York Times, among other publications. In short, we've got really very, very knowledgeable, wise personality who's taken time out and created this presentation and is willing to share her thoughts in this very important session. Are you future ready? Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, there we go. I think you can see me now. So thank you so much for inviting me to join you in this. I was able to catch a bit of the last session, and I know there's already been a lot of very practical, helpful tools presented, and I hope that you will find this useful as well. So, so what I'll do is I will share with you a little bit of research we've done at CFA Institute that is focused on helping people through their careers. And I hope that we can have some good Q&A and discussion, and hopefully this will pique your interest. So I will draw upon two different pieces of work we've done. One just came out a week or two ago. It's called The Future of Work in Investment Management. And I'll focus a lot of my remarks at the beginning on that. And then we're also going to look at a paper called Investment Professional of the Future, which we wrote a couple years ago, looking at how roles and skills will be changing over the next 5 to 10 years. So these are both available on our website. I'll give you some QR codes at the end as well. But really what we found was in the last 2 years, so much has changed. We needed to think about updating some of this as well. So, we look in the future of work at how the COVID disruption to work, which has, really been prolonged for a long time, how it's made leaders and employees think more carefully about what work might look like going forward. It's, of course, making lots of headlines, but we think this is actually the first in-depth study looking at how this plays out in the investment industry. I would say that we'll share some of the findings that overall the industry has fared pretty well during the COVID disruption in terms of jobs and things like that. But we do think that longer term, there are many, many changes to work that we will be able to point back to this as a turning point. So I will just also note that we will be looking at kind of these three areas you can see noted: context, content, and culture. So what do we mean by that? Context is really where work gets done, and this move to a hybrid work environment. People are, thinking about that, I think, pretty seriously. What does that look like for me? The content of work, and so how will the actual skills again be changing over time? How do we see acceleration of some of the things we've been talking about for a while, related to technology, sustainability, and other things like that? And then culture is about how we work. So again, it's the where, what, and how of work. And culture is really oftentimes talked about as how we do things around here. And how does that change now as we look at some of these other things going on? So with that, I'll give you the methodology of this Future of Work paper. We have surveyed 4,600 CFA Institute members from around the world, collected this just in March and April here. You can see the demographic breakdown. We try to look at things here from a perspective of geography, gender, and generation. We also have surveyed more than 40 organizations that are leading investment organizations we've been working with for about 18 months on some of their culture practices. And they represent more than 230,000 employees. Lastly, the investment professional of the future, to the extent I quote that, is based on a survey of about 3,800 of our members and candidates back in 2019, and also some industry leaders. So what we'll try to do is give you kind of the individual's perspective and then also the leader or hiring manager perspective. So this is just basically our table of contents. There are 10 points. We won't go into all of them in as much detail as we go through, but let's jump in. So the context of careers, how will work change in terms of what it looks like? So as you're at this point in your career, many of you kind of in the early stages, there's going to be a lot of change, and that should be kind of exciting as people are figuring it out together. So I mentioned first that the industry has been pretty resilient during this time. And so of these members we surveyed, only 6% reported an employment status change in the year 2020. 15% had a pay cut related to the COVID-19 disruption, and 8% had a pay cut for other reasons. You can see some of this by job title as well. Now, I should note that this includes variable compensation, bonuses, and so forth. So what we've determined here is that since markets have been pretty strong in terms of performance, other than the sort of sharp dip in March of 2020, this is consistent with the idea that investment job security is highly correlated with market performance. So we found that there were not differences by gender or years of experience in this. But digging a little bit deeper, we also found that most compensation reductions were small and they were expected to be temporary. So almost half of those affected said the impact was less than 10% of their compensation, and more than half expected their pay reduction to last no more than a year. So again, a bit of a sort of shock to the system, some impact, but overall, this has been an industry that has pivoted pretty well to working from home and figuring out how to adapt. So we also look at confidence over, looking forward about job security over the next 18 to 24 months. You can see, more than 60% are confident about careers and investment management overall, and 3/4 are confident that their job will be secure. So this has, in relative terms, been a pretty good industry to be in, and people are pretty optimistic about the future. So we're going to intersperse some polling throughout this session, and we'll come to our first one. So hopefully we can set that up to go now. I'll read off what it says for anybody who may not have visibility into it. Are we good? Are people able to see? I'm gonna wait for a little bit of a cue. Okay. Okay. Are the participants able to see now the question? Great. So it should say that many organizations are considering hybrid work arrangements in the future, right? Where part of your time you would be in the office and part of the time you'd be working elsewhere. And so the question is what portion of the work week you might like to work remotely on a long-term basis, even after any pandemic-related health risks subside. So we'll see how you respond and then look at what we found from others. Okay. So Srinivas, are you able to read out the results?
I can't see the results here.
Okay. Well, we can give it a second or we can move on. Okay.
I won't be surprised though, Rebecca, if our results are going to be different from what India is going to say is going to be different from what the rest of the world is saying.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what we found so far, and our audience can see whether they think it matches with their perspective. So overall, globally, we found that more than 80% of investment professionals surveyed would like to work remotely part of the time. So a strong desire for this hybrid work environment. And we've seen studies kind of across different knowledge industries showing that same sort of result, that there's a high desire to work remotely. So as we looked at different segments, there was a slight difference by gender. Women were 87%, but men, again, 80% wanted to work remotely part of the time. So again, strong desire for both. We did note that those with less than 2 years of work experience were least likely to want to work remotely. And this is consistent with our expectation that it's just more difficult to learn from others in a remote or hybrid environment, especially without the benefit of a robust professional network. So I think going back to some of the things that Robert said, it's just that much more important to build that network. By region, I will note that the interest in remote working is highest in the Americas and in EMEA, about 85% versus across Asia Pacific, it's closer to 70%. Let's see, I will also note that I think in India, we had a little bit lower than average, but still pretty high. So the outlier, I would say, is China. Only 45% of people said that they wanted to do remote work. So yeah, sorry, India was 75%.
Yeah, but in our poll here, fully remote, those who have voted for fully remote is just 13%, 13 of the 115 responses. So less than that, well less than that.
Yeah.
Bulk of the audience is saying they want to go to office 1 to 2 days a week. So slightly.
He said the majority said what?
58 voters, more than half. They're saying that they want to be in office about 1 to 2 days per week. Got it.
Yep, I think that makes sense based on who we have here and what we're hearing globally. So. So then if there's a desire for hybrid work, the question is, will employers agree? Will they go along with that? And so we asked those organizations, and we found that despite some prominent headlines by leaders that are very committed to getting back to a traditional office environment, most organizations are indicating that their policies will be changing. So the dramatic shift in both these types of policies, remote work policy and flexible work policy, You can see, between 15 to 20% of firms in the past were highly supportive of this, and now it's closer to 3/4. So in sum, it shows that what had been case-by-case exceptions to the rule is really becoming accepted practice by a lot of organizations. So the next point is just that the 2020 experience in most markets has been even more challenging as adaptations have been needed. So a recognition of flexibility and the needs there. This has related to having to adapt how you use technology, just different policy changes, how you work as a manager, and also physical and mental health concerns and dependent care requirements. So here we had asked, do you have dependents living with you? And we found that about 50% of members have children living with them. Among those with school-aged children, 2/3 reported that their children were doing remote schooling in March of 2021. We also found in India that there were many who have elderly family members that they're caring for. So again, this is part of just the real life situation, the personal side of what work looks like. And so we found that there's an interest in this hybrid work. There is support from employers from a policy standpoint. And then the question was, can it be done well? And so, will this be effective? And so among investment professionals, we found that about a little more than half said that remote working has increased their efficiency, and less than 20% said it had decreased their efficiency. We then asked those who manage others, what do you think about the efficiency of those people who report to you? They were a little less certain. About 40% said, I'm not sure. But again, still 1/3 thought that the efficiency of their direct reports had increased. Results amongst the respondents in India were very similar to the global numbers here. So as we move to the next one, shall we go ahead to the next poll?
And it will take, the result will take 20 minutes, Rebecca.
Okay.
20
all right,
seconds, sorry.
Oh, 20 seconds, okay.
The result will be...
So I was wondering, Rebecca, as people take these polls, I was wondering, how valid will these polls be as we go into the next year and the year after? Do you expect a bit of dynamism in terms of people's preferences and what economists often call what are the revealed choices versus what people say in the polls?
Right.
That could also be something that is different, right?
Definitely. We have to think about sort of the validity of the responses in any survey. And also, I think this has been an interesting discussion around what's a temporary effect and what's long-term, right? So I guess here, as we're looking at, what are the things most important to you? Is it about ability to work anywhere, or a high degree of teamwork, having time to focus and uninterrupted time, or a predictable workday? Those are all different characteristics that I think we have maybe valued differently since having such a big disruption to how we work. I feel like lots of people are also thinking a little more carefully about just how they use their time. Right. How can I be efficient? How can I get my work done and then move along to other things that I need to do as well? So I think there's a long-term shift here, but I also think that there's some inertia as we move from fully remote in most cases to something new. We'll have to iterate a little bit, I think.
So I guess there might be a couple of seconds more. I just wanted to know what's it like in the US, and if you were to are you chatting with youngsters in the US? Are they feeling happy that they are doing remotely? Because obviously, if you are doing remotely, you have much more time you can save on the commute, and
right.
use that time for learning and reskilling yourself, right?
Well, that's certainly the biggest benefit in terms of working remotely is the time saved for commuting. I know that I used to use that commute time though for things, right? Like reading, or if you're on a train, or if, audiobooks, podcasts, things like that. So I think people have had to reframe a little bit on that. But the other thing I think has been interesting is a lot of organizations have been doing remote internships, right? And that's just a different situation, but I think there have been some good experiences, even with adaptations needed.
So we've got the poll results, Rebecca. 37%, 61 of those polled, they are saying that they would like the ability to work from anywhere. Of course, 38 people are saying that there's a high degree of teamwork. So people value teamwork a lot, and focused and uninterrupted work is something that people value as well. 51 of them are saying that we value that. And just a small number, 16 people are saying that they want to have a predictable work day. So, one can expect, we've got a very young crowd, a very energetic crowd here in India, and I can expect that, they don't really care whether it's a predictable day or an unpredictable day, but they want all the flexibility that can be made available.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think one of the things that does attract people to the investment industry is the intellectual challenge behind it. And sometimes that comes with unpredictability, right? It's kind of nice to know that you come into work and you get to solve a new problem or think about something from a new perspective. So predictability can be good or bad. So going into that a little bit more, though, what we wanted to do to help the industry was think about different job roles in particular and how they're structured. Like, will this really work well? So to your earlier point about people might answer one way, like, I was pretty effective, but how does this really look job by job? Because if policies are made too broadly, it may mean that some jobs are more effective than others. So first, what we did here is we found that we asked people, how much can you effectively work from home? Could you before COVID? And now, what are your expectations in the future? So post-COVID, how has that changed? And so what we found is that investment professionals across all roles now believe they can do a greater percentage of their job from home. Companies have enabled this more. And even some roles that were thought to be largely incompatible with remote work, like chief investment officers, chief financial officers, and traders, those have proven to be adaptable and have seen some of the biggest increases in pre versus expected future work from home effectiveness. I will note that client-facing roles such as sales agents and relationship managers report only modest effectiveness gains. And so while communication technology has strengthened intra-company, and that communication, there's still has a little bit of a hesitation to transition to remote client management in the same way. So back to the question that we asked, we find that there are different elements within a job that can make it more or less suited for hybrid. So here you can see on the blue bar here is those people who have said, I need the majority of my time to be for uninterrupted work. And then on the other side, on the green bar, it's the people that say, I need a majority of my time for teamwork. So you can see how, perhaps working remotely would be, fine for all that uninterrupted work. For teamwork, you probably need some portion of that time to be with others. So again, based on sort of the balance here, we found that the structure of investment professionals' work seems to support a hybrid model. We find that the people that need the most teamwork are chief investment officers, chief investment officers, IT roles, and managers of managers. At the other end, those who need the most uninterrupted time include professors, credit and research analysts, and economists. So that kind of talks about hybrid. And then the structure related to flexibility, we asked how much of your day is predictable. And so because as you think about an organization, they might be giving up something if you need to be flexible and they can't necessarily access you, right? So what we found was the more that key stakeholders like clients or others or market events can impact your work, the greater the risk it is to the employer to have flexible work arrangements, right? So we find that the least predictable jobs are analysts, economists, consultants, and CEOs. And so depending on the urgency involved, these roles might need to be kind of always accessible to some degree, even if there's flexibility in a policy, or in some cases, maybe new team structures can be built to create additional coverage. So that's just sort of where we work, the hybrid aspect, and I'm going to speed a little more through the next couple sections. So as we look at the content of work, I did mention that client management models are going to adapt. Here, the headline is that expectations are that business travel will be permanently reduced by about 25 to 50%. And you might be interested to see that, only about 40% of those surveyed say they were heavy travelers pre-COVID, right? Meaning that they traveled more than 1 week per month. And that has now pretty much fallen in half. But what we all know has happened is that we're all using video conferencing so much more. And so while that wasn't so popular before, now 80% of people say they expect to be pretty heavy users of video calls in the future. Another thing we're looking at is just potential operational and compliance risks with the hybrid model. And so there is an expectation that regulators will increase their scrutiny of financial technology tools as hybrid work models become more widespread. However, our members don't expect that there will necessarily be an increase in unethical activity. So again, I think we will see how models adapt, and we'll be talking with regulators and others to see what are some of the potential challenges that need to be addressed. So as we think about the content of work again, this pulls from that Investment Professional of the Future paper I mentioned. So a couple years ago, when we asked people, how much do you think your job will change? Meaning, if you're a portfolio manager and you know that type of job well, how much will it change in the next 5 to 10 years? And we found, 43% said their role will be substantially different in the next 5 to 10 years. So, we also asked, do you think the role won't exist? The highest number there was around performance analysts, but, we basically think that all these roles will still exist, but they will be changing a lot. And a lot of it has to do with technology, about the ways that data are used, right? So the process of finding the right data, refining it so that you have the right data, and then doing that analysis. Hopefully over time, this will shift to more of a need for the judgment and less of sort of the mundane tasks related to that. So I think it is an exciting story for those of you who, again, have a long career ahead in this area. Now, what we also talk about is in times of a lot of disruption and change and the evolution of the industry here, there becomes a greater need to learn new skills. So clearly that's something where CFA Institute wants to be helpful to people. We found that globally, 91% of people said that, in order to further my career, I have to actively develop new professional skills. So, I often say at charter award ceremonies, well, the good news is you're done. The bad news is you're not, because you have to keep learning. And I think people recognize that it is continual learning that will help you succeed in this industry. And I should note that the number for the respondents in India was 99%. So I have to keep learning. I know that. Although having said that, only, less than half say that they have the support needed from their organization for that. So, we will be helping however we can. So let's go ahead and look at the next polling question, which talks about skills you're looking to develop over the next 3 to 5 years. And we've kind of broken this down into a few different categories. So you can think about analytical skills needed. There are also client management or advisory skills, data programming and visualization skills, and investment skills. So if you can, I think you should be able to vote for up to 2. And we'll look at sort of what are some of the trending skills out there. We've looked at LinkedIn to see what are people putting on their profiles. We've also surveyed to see, again, what are some of these trending topics. I will note that we work with our practice analysis team. So the group that is in the CFA curriculum area, looking at what needs to come into the curriculum next, what are people talking about? That's a lot of what we're looking at here on the future of skills.
That's probably one of the hottest topics and the most interesting topics. If I know the crowd correctly, On one point, I just wanted to check with you, Rebecca. It's interesting that 43% or 44% of the IT folks are saying that their jobs are going to change substantially, but the
Yeah.
CIOs don't think so, and the analysts are somewhere in the middle. I recently read an article. I don't know if you've read that one. It's by Mike Mayo. I think he's the Wells
Oh,
Fargo bank analyst. So he was saying that he's a famous analyst, and he's saying that
yeah.
he's producing research. The amount of research he's producing is double the amount that he produced 10 years back, with half the numbers that he had 10 years back, which is quite amazing.
With half the numbers, is that right?
Yes. So the job also has changed. I mean, going to the job context, it means that his job is no more the same, because if you were doing the same thing, he would need the same number of people.
Right. No,
So
I mean,
that has changed.
I think it is interesting because with more data, we have so much more of an opportunity to do more analysis. And then the question is, what is meaningful? How do you think not only about return on investment, but return on your time, right? That is the thing that is fixed for all of us. We have this 24 hours and, we can't spend all of it working. Although we do find that over this time period, people are doing more work than in the past. But yeah, I think that that's where these analytical skills will be so much more important applied to data.
Yeah.
So
so it's surprisingly, I mean, of course, it's a insignificant tie or insignificant comparison, but we've got 65 people or 31% of the audience saying that investment skills are the most important, analytical skills are secondary. 28% are saying that, 58 people. And then third rank is for data programming and visualization skills, which is 22%. And 19% are saying client management and advisory skills. So let's hear from you, Rebecca. What do you think of this result compared to what we have?
Yeah, well, I think that's great, and it's good to see some variety there, right? Because we need, a lot of different skills going forward. So here are a couple different things that we pulled together. One is this is pretty recent. We just pulled from LinkedIn Talent Insights. People with these job titles, what are they learning now? And so you can see that, so and you might think about this a little bit as a career path, right? That people maybe start out as an analyst and move to portfolio manager and chief investment officer. And so you can see, analytics is important all the way through. You see that heavy on the CIO part. Client management also increases over time as a need, right? The more that you're working directly with those clients. And I would encourage you, as you are in your career, to seek opportunities to get to join client meetings, even if it's just observing and things like that. It'll teach you a lot. And I think we usually find that it helps motivate people. They say, oh, this is why I'm doing it again. Data programming, though, of course, is huge right now, and you see that a lot on the left side of this page. Many organizations are trying to, if not require, heavily encourage doing Python, understanding more about machine learning, and so forth. And those are, good skills that will, undoubtedly over time, the programs will change, but the logic you need for all of that will endure. And then investment skills. I know that we've got a lot of people in the audience here who are, kind of at some point in the CFA candidate journey, and that's really important foundational knowledge. So keep at it, and I'll share a little bit more about some other things we found. So that was the most current and a little more granular. This goes back to the 2019 report that I mentioned, and so we asked, again, 3,800 members and candidates, what are topics that you are either currently pursuing or planning to pursue? So you can see here the top rated one was soft skills. And this is also the one where the majority of people interested in it are currently working on it. So we kind of call that the saying-doing ratio. It was less than 1, right? So, and I think that points to the fact that you can work on this all the time. It doesn't have to just be a structured course. But the other reason that I think this is interesting is that soft skills really permeate all different areas, right? So whether you're externally facing or internally facing, you still need to be able to persuade other people of your view. And so we know that there are lots of different technical skills you might need, and many of those follow in this list, but soft skills really permeate all of them. So I think that's good to see. You can also see that, again, toward the bottom of this list are things like the data analysis coding languages, data visualization, where we saw, again, a couple years ago, a big expectation to upskill there, but they hadn't done it yet. So one of the questions we sometimes get is, do I need to be a programmer to be successful in the future? And so we do not think that investment professionals all need to become programmers, but we are seeing that there are more people with those sorts of skills that are taking the CFA exam. And so I would focus you in particular on the data interpretation part that is in the middle. So again, understanding how to use data well, that is what you'll need to really focus on. So this is what people are thinking I need to work on. This is what people are working on. And then, of course, the question is, what about the people that are doing the hiring? What do they want? And so we asked those leaders, what are the types of skills that you want? And again, we were looking at over the next 5 to 10 years, what are going to be most important? So here we actually find that technical skills are the lowest ranked of these 4 different categories. But again, they are important in the beginning of your career, especially. The area with the most interest in there is called solution skills. So a lot of organizations do now have solutions areas where it's really about understanding client needs and then developing appropriate portfolios from there. Soft skills are next most important. And one of the things I'll point you to here is there are a number that have asterisks by them. And that is noting the skills that are most often cited as difficult to find in the investment profession. So this is, again, where you can really stand out because we find even as people need more data skills, it also means then more soft skills are needed to explain to others what you're doing. So it's not just a black box. Leadership skills are next, and they're pretty straightforward. The highest ranked there is the ability to articulate mission and vision. Why are you doing what you're doing? I know we like leaders who can tell us that. And then the last area is T-shaped skills. So you can say by a wide margin, this is the most important. So what does this mean? So really what we mean here is if you think about the letter T, right? You've got deep subject matter expertise as that vertical bar. And then the horizontal bar is the ability to connect across disciplines. So here you can see with more detail, things like situational fluency and adaptability, ability to connect across disciplines. These are having a really diverse network, cultivating different relationships and things like that, understanding how systems work. These are the things that are maybe a little bit ambiguous at this point, but they're the future skills that as you develop in your career, it'll be important to think about this. You can sort of think about this in terms of like fintech, for example. So if you think about bringing the fin and the tech together, if they aren't brought together well, you could see how that could create really some bad products for the end investor. Another area for skills development is sustainability. And so we did a recent paper on this called The Future of Sustainability in Investment Management. And so we looked at about 1 million job profiles on LinkedIn with these different job titles. And we found that less than 1% have sustainability skills listed. And now there's been a lot of growth in the last year. And then at the far right column, you can see that among job postings, there's a high demand for these skills. So close to 20% of portfolio manager roles that are posted are seeking ESG expertise. And that last column represents about 10,000 job postings. So again, there's a big supply and demand imbalance. We do have a new certificate many of you may know of called the ESG investing or certificate in ESG investing. So that's a smaller course compared to the CFA program. So let me just offer up a bit of a roadmap for investment professionals. 3 points here. So the first thing is that I mentioned disruption means you're going to need to learn more to keep up. So here we borrow a concept from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, called the Flywheel Effect. So he applies this to firms, but we're going to apply it to careers. So what he says is, no matter how dramatic the end result, good to great journeys never happen in one fell swoop. In building something great, there is no single defining action, no grand program, no solitary lucky break. Rather, the process resembles relentlessly pushing a giant heavy flywheel, turn upon turn, building momentum until points of breakthrough and beyond. So on the one hand, this might sound like a lot of hard work, but it also should decrease your stress level. There's not just one decision you have to make that will define your career forever. We expect that people will be having probably about 6 different careers within a career as we look out. And really the question is, can you keep growing? So we talk about a growth mindset where you continue to learn. You don't say, this is all I can do, but you keep pushing yourself. And part of this is about building an alliance with each employer. So you contribute to the organization, and in return, you get kind of direct and indirect rewards, right? So you get a paycheck, but you also are getting knowledge along the way. And if you think about that as sort of a portfolio of skills and knowledge, that's the way people are kind of thinking in the future here. So, of course, one way to get that flywheel going is through specific structured courses. And so to the extent that the CFA program is relevant for many of you, we asked the CFA charter holders in our Investment Professional of the Future study, what have been the career benefits to you of the CFA designation? The good news is 94% say they have had career benefits from getting the designation. And you can see the highest area is about increased credibility. So again, you are proving to employers, as you know, that you have the perseverance to get through this, difficult set of exams, but also that you have the knowledge needed to succeed. There's also, of course, better access to jobs, ability to get promoted, and in some cases, it's a job requirement. So one of the other things we think about in terms of how you build knowledge is just on the job. So we asked the survey base, again, how much of the time that you're working are you doing things that are familiar versus unfamiliar work? So you can see here, the green is about doing new work. And so on average, it's about 30% of people's time they spend doing new work. A little bit less as you get farther on in your career, you've learned more, but in general, people are continuing to learn. And that's one of the great things about being in this industry. Now, the second part of the roadmap is, as we talk about those different areas, those different skill areas, we recognize that there are different types of skills that are important in different phases of your career. So we call this the skills pathway. And it takes those 4 categories we talked about and sort of shows how a typical career might progress. So at the start, technical skills are really the most important on a relative basis. But as time goes on, you'll see those don't necessarily have to increase that much. It's the other types of skills that increase more and more, with particular emphasis on leadership and T-shaped skills in later career. And then the third part of this kind of roadmap is to become more tech savvy. We've talked about this kind of throughout, but technology will be more important for all investment professionals. So we call this the hierarchy of impacts. The bottom is that everyone will have to do things differently, and you have to be comfortable using and understanding technology. Some of the organizations that we've been talking to a lot, they say, it's actually really helpful for them to interview people on Zoom because they get to see how people interact with technology. Are you comfortable with it? Can you convey what you need to via a screen? That's one of the skills that you'll need in the future. In the middle of this hierarchy, you can see that this is an area where investment teams and technology teams really have to work together. So those T-shaped skills become more important, and you create actually T-shaped teams, right? So you may not need to become a data scientist, but you'll probably have a data scientist on your team. This is where, again, more judgment and analysis will be needed. And so, we know that AI can amplify an investment team's performance, but not replicate its creativity. So we talk a lot about AI plus HI, so the benefits of artificial intelligence plus human intelligence. And again, this is an area where soft skills will be more important, so you can explain data-driven strategies to clients. And then at the top, we have hyper specialist roles. So those are less common, but very valuable, right? So that includes roles at quant firms and AI labs. And again, those data scientists in the industry. So a lot on skills there. Happy to talk about that more. I'll just give a very brief commentary here on the culture of organizations, because as you think about firms to work for, you want to make sure it's a good, it's a place where you feel like you can fit in and add to the culture. So with that, we have another poll. So unless you tell me we're running out of time, we can, I guess, pull this one up.
I think, but put the poll in. There's lots and lots of questions, very interesting questions.
Okay.
Put the poll in, and we can start straight away. Take up the questions if you think.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
great.
Folks, the poll is there for you to take. But thank you for all the questions. I think you've got a very good cross section of questions. So we'll start with the location first, Rebecca. Do you know this facility in Texas? I believe Boca Chica. I don't know whether I've pronounced it right. So one of the persons, and I don't have this person's name. This person is saying, why can't organizations create Boca Chica like facilities so that employees can work very nicely in one environment? What are your comments? Quick comments.
Yeah, I think that the work environment is going to be a differentiator for employers going forward. And so, but I think it also helps that not everybody necessarily wants the same thing. But yeah, so I don't know if I can comment specifically on the company being referenced, but this is an area where you're going to see a lot of change.
Right. Okay. Let me go quickly to the second question. It's on skills. So what exactly do you mean by skills? What skills should we be taking? And I see your roadmap. You're nicely showing the flywheel. Keep on learning. That's the first thing. The last thing was technology. But we've got here a young cohort of charter holders, as well as not charter holders, but charter pending people who are raring to do. What is the first thing that they should be doing? And what is the second thing? And what is the third thing? What's your advice?
Well, I think that clearly, this group has built a lot of knowledge already, right? And the challenge is really, how do you put it into practice, right? And so I think one thing I would say is that I think you have to be a little more creative about different ways to get that experience, right? Think about the transferability of skills. So, what did you like most in the CFA curriculum, for example? Pick areas that you really enjoy, and I think you'll do well in them, right? So don't try to force fit, but go a bit deeper in the areas that you like, and then recognize that those skills can be applied in many different areas, and people are not thinking about career paths in quite as traditional a way. So I think that, plus building that kind of diverse network, as was mentioned in the last session, I think that will serve people well.
No, very well said. And the last speaker also mentioned that you should try to focus on things that you like, and don't try to fit yourself into something. Let me go to the next question. Just before going to that question, a little bit about India. We know that in the poll, folks said that communication skills are not that important. But when I talk with employers, Rebecca, and folks who are listening to this talk, I always get this complaint that it's not numbers, it is storytelling, and how you tell that story, how you communicate that story, whatever investment thesis you got, how you communicate that story is important. And our folks here, a majority of them lack the communication skills. So please focus on communication skills. Let me go to the next question quickly. So this is probably also addressing on the T-shaped skills. So how do exactly analytical and investment skills, how do they differ?
Yeah, well, I think that investment skills are a type of analytical skill, right? So they're not, it wasn't mutually exclusive entirely, and when we did that poll, but I think that understanding how to use data and then apply it in an investment context is what we want to try to bring together, right? So there's again, I think it's theory and practice in a lot of ways, right? So can you, know know the key concepts, apply it to, say, analyzing a company, analyzing a business, and then and then look for new ways too. On the data side, the analytical side, there are a lot of different ways that we've kind of learned to do analysis, and those are changing.
Can I give an example here?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so in India there's these mutual funds, right? So I think most of the folks, I hope all of you, if not at least majority of you, have invested in mutual funds. And if you have, then the way how do you invest in mutual funds? How do you do a performance analysis of what the mutual fund returns are like? That could be perhaps an analytical side of things, although it is not different from the investment side of things, but you're doing an analysis of what the performance is like. And on the other hand, you're looking at the investment implications. What is this person investing in, which sectors, and so on and so forth. So that could be one categorization. Sorry to.
No, that's very well said. Thank you for those insights.
So let me go to the next question. So this question is about Python and data analytics and Tableau. So if you want, I can take that question, Rebecca. So the exact question is isn't Python, Tableau, do they not come under data analytics? In your chart, they were separate into visualization and data analytics. But I mean, let them hear from both of us. Please do advise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think the question is, where are you sort of in that chain of analysis, right? And I think to the extent that you know a little bit about all of it, that's great. It may be worth it for you to know a lot about the different areas. But I would say, recognize where your skills are and where you can rely on other team members.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So those are, by the way, folks, these are just names, right? Tableau. Today there's Tableau, and you've got Python. Tomorrow it could be C++ or anything else. What is important, as Rebecca pointed out, there are two distinct parts in it. One is the analytical side of things, and the other is visualization side of things. So if you Google what Tableau is famous for visualizing things. Python can be used anywhere. It's really a Swiss knife. But the reason it's there on the analytical side of things is because you could do analytics in using Python, but you couldn't do analytics using Tableau. I mean, the kind of analytics you could do in Python.
Yep.
So one more important thing that I missed, Rebecca, and if you permit me to point out, there's a competency framework, and if people just Google the competency framework. Just Google CFA Institute competency framework. Now, if you go to the competency framework, and this is free, you'll find a lot of investment roles that Rebecca has in her slides. And for each of these roles, there's a very detailed matrix on types of skills and competencies that people should have, must have. So do take a look. Let me go to the next question quickly, Rebecca. This is a good one. Is there a possibility of looking at behavioral finance as a future career prospect?
Yeah, I mean, behavioral finance is one of the most interesting areas, I think. And whenever we ask our members, what do you want to learn about? People always are interested in that, right? How do you think about your biases and so forth? So yeah, I think there are some interesting firms too that have started up to try to say, okay, well, what if we really analyze your trading patterns or your decision making based on some emotions and some behavioral biases, and people have been able to, create persistent returns in that. So I think it's a fascinating area. We'll see a lot more there.
Right. So the next question is on sustainability, and you mentioned the ESG certificate, Rebecca, but what exactly a sustainability skill? To give you a background, India is the sustainability keyword and buzzword, if I may actually call it, is just catching up in India, right? I mean, ESG, people do say in our audiences in India, people do say that ESG is important, but when we have an ESG seminar, we don't find people. We struggle to get people. With that background, over to you.
Yeah, well, I think this has certainly grown in interest over the last couple of years, and I would note that when we wrote our paper about sustainability, we had a really good group in India thinking about this. So I think, again, if you're looking for these new trends, this is an area that will grow. But what are those skills? It means, so thinking about aspects of basically risk, return, and impact, sort of making a 3D model now is where people are headed. And so if you think about factors that relate to the environment, social factors, and governance, there's a lot of research out there to show that those are correlated with better returns, right? That there are risks we maybe haven't incorporated before in our analysis that to be an excellent analyst, you need to consider. One of the challenges there too is that data look a little bit different sometimes then. We talk about hard data, right? That's the stuff you normally get out of the report, the company report and so forth. But then soft data are things kind of like survey results, right? Well, is that really true? It's someone's opinion. You have to interpret it. But we know that those things can be really material. Yeah.
Right. So we've got a few more questions actually, and they keep on coming. This is on AI, and you've been on the House committee. And tell us what that experience was like. When we are talking to the U.S. House committee, we see it on TV. So please share with us and the audience what it is like to be on the House committee. Sure.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting experience, and so there were. I sat next to a guy who's like the most cited person on SSRN, the Social Science Research Network, right? People want to know about this topic. And so the US government and these politicians were wanting to know, what do we need to know about this for the future, right? Will there be massive substitution of technology for labor? And what impacts could that have for employment? And so what I talked about was this AI plus HI model that, if you have great data and you have a good model, it can't necessarily be just unsupervised, or, we see that there have been some challenges when it isn't done well. Larry from the Hong Kong office has written a great paper on AI pioneers. So I talked about a lot of those case studies, right? How people are using some of this new type of data in interesting ways.
Right. So now, the specific question is, will AI be a turning point in the finance industry?
Will AI be a turning point? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more potential. So I would say in many ways, yes. But again, what that means for individual careers will vary. Right. So I think broadly about what that means. I think there's potential for AI in many different aspects of the investment firm and the investment process. And, it may not be the turning point quite today. We're still relatively early, but I think it will be a major part of how we think about this, in the next decade.
Right. So particularly for wealth management, Rebecca, what is your experience in the US? Because I was talking with a startup investor in India, and this investor mentioned to me that India often follows the US model when it comes to startups. So whatever is happening in the US right now in wealth management in terms of AI may happen in India. So share with us.
So startups and wealth management and AI, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think, I guess for a while we've talked about, with the technology, will we have really startups that completely dominate and take over the more traditional firms, or will there be something else that falls out, right? That's a little bit more of a compromise sort of. And so what I think we have seen is that on the wealth management side, say 5 years ago, the big question was robo-advisors. Will they take over? Will that be the sort of end of the traditional wealth manager? And we haven't seen that so much. What we've seen is that there's a transactional side of the relationship that can be done more effectively with technology. And so the user interface to clients has improved a lot. But then we also recognize that advice is a very human thing, and people want that relationship. And so, one of the examples I liked was a robo-advisor who said, well, we normally would have thought that we should just treat every client the same and do the same thing all the time. But what if you have a market disruption? And, you could send out a message to everyone saying, don't worry, don't panic, it'll be fine. But if we have the data and we say, oh, you know what, it's only 10% of people that go on regularly that are probably even paying attention, we should send them a custom message. And we should recognize we're only going to create panic in the people that weren't even going to be paying attention. So some of these different customized approaches, I think, will benefit investors and the industry in the long term.
Right. Thank you for that. The next question, slightly different topic, but connected maybe. So is there a course on investor psychology? And where can I take that course? Or where can this person take that course?
Sorry, say that one more time. Poll?
Investor psychology, course on investor psychology.
Yeah. A course on investor psychology. Yeah, there is. There's a good course done by Harvard, I know, but that's an exec ed kind of in-person thing, so that's not highly accessible. We've had some also really good speakers at the CFA annual conference and other events, and so I think that's a really great resource. I think probably within ARX as well, the research exchange. It's a pretty regular topic, so look for authors like Dan Ariely and so forth on that.
Absolutely right, Rebecca. So those who are interested in very short courses, they can look at, they can just Google CFA Institute, Behavioral Finance, CFA Institute, as Rebecca said, Dan Ariely, CFA Institute, Daniel Kahneman, and you'll get lots and lots of really good, very nice, insightful interviews on investor psychology as well as behavioral finance. Next question, now it goes to, isn't there a gray line with understanding one's behavior, which may breach one's privacy with the way data is being collected these days? So what's your thinking on that?
Sorry, on data privacy?
Yeah,
right?
data privacy. Yeah. What's the gray line there, and how should people be thinking of this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And one of the other studies we do is about investor trust and asking, how much personal information are you willing to give online and things like that. So we're kind of tracking that over time. I think data privacy is one of those areas that, will always be so important to the industry. I talked about the regulatory scrutiny we expect as people are moving to more technology, partly because of hybrid work, but also just in general. And again, data privacy and intellectual property, those are the two areas probably where it'll be focused.
Right. So I've got, I don't know how much time I've got, but let's make it like it's 8:35 here. So let's make it just 3 or 4 points now. So no presentation actually goes without blockchain and cryptos. So here's a question for you from one of the viewers. How does blockchain change the shape of finance industry, or even cryptos for that matter? Quick advice.
Oh, well, that's an easy one. Yeah, I think it's going to have a big change, a big impact on things. I think again, some of the more traditional investment roles I think will be less impacted, but again, the way an investment organization works will be changed a lot. I don't know that I can give it justice in a small amount of time.
Yes. So just going back to the last poll, Rebecca, I'll just read out the results for you. Majority of the people said, 31%, said that learning new things is what they are really interested in. Working with a very good team and supervisor is very important, 29%. And flexibility at work-life balance is the third thing that's important for them. Financial compensation is the last thing on their minds. So, just that result. Now, 2 more things I wanted to see if you could cover them very quickly. Can you just recap the 3 things that you mentioned for the roadmap, very briefly? The 3 things.
Yep. So the first one is that sort of career flywheel. So you always have to keep learning, but recognize that what you put in at the beginning will pay off and will build momentum. The second one is about the skills pathway. recognizing that at different stages in your career, different types of skills will matter more. So technical matters more at the beginning, but don't stay there unless you really just want to have a very technical career. That is one path. And then lastly, it's about technology and how you think about your relationship with technology, whether you will be really the technical expert on your team, or you'll be the one to help clients understand why it's useful to them, or just kind of be the translator across investment and technology experts.
Yes, as Larry Finch, the BlackRock CEO, said, every single person in his company, BlackRock, is a technologist. Now, last question, Rebecca, what are the three websites or resources that you would like our audience to visit every single day?
Every day. Well, I think, well, let me at least give the group the links to the things I've talked about, if we're able to share that on the screen. But I would also just note that, there's a great career resources area. Some things are member only, but there's a paper called about career, the career resources book by Kyle Guyur on our website. And I would highly recommend that. Another book that I would mention that's not a CFA Institute resource, but I really enjoyed, is by the co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman. He wrote a book called The Alliance. And again, it really talks about how you can consider your career a series of kind of stints, so little gigs, so that you learn what you need to learn in order to be very flexible and adaptable for the future. So that's it.
Right. Thank you very much for this, Rebecca. There are lots of questions. I'm really sorry, viewers, that we will not be able to cover all the questions that we've had. I hope to catch up with you soon in different forums. Do attend our regular career webinars, which are there every single month, and they are free of charge. And the practitioner series, which is also there. Don't miss out on them. You can go to YouTube and look at any career, and you can get a very good snapshot of what that career means, what skills are required, what competencies are required from real experts. That's it for now. Thank you so very much, Rebecca, for presenting this very insightful results of the surveys that you've been doing and the work that you have been doing for CFA Institute.
It's great to see you. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you.